All right, welcome everybody. We're going to talk about how do you vote on charting, like on a project that has a chart that's confusing, right? There are these different scenarios that can come up. It's like, was this successful in a 24-hour period, or was this successful in a 7-day period? Sometimes it's not 100% clear, and so we're going to bring up some chart examples and kind of break this down to offer some guidance, some really clear guidance when you run into these different scenarios. How do you vote if you're voting on projects, success or not successful? And it will also be educational. So even if you're not voting, I think this discussion is incredibly valuable in being able to determine what you're looking for and to recognize success when you found it, and to also recognize when some people might be saying something was successful because they're trying to create a lot of excitement around what they're launching next. And you look at it and you're like, you know what, that wasn't successful. So this is going to be really helpful, even if you're not voting on projects. So Ryan, I think Ryan's going to bring up some charts here, and we'll just start breaking them down. And Ryan, I know we opened up one on a call the other day. I think we might want to start with that first one again real quick, just so we have everything encapsulated, in one call for the community. And I do want to say we will have a summary, fast lightning round version of this, but we wanted to just record this, kind of walk through our conversation, our discussion for those that want to get this early. And then eventually we'll summarize these guidelines into a really boiled down, fast review. But I think we should just open up the first one we talked about the other day, just so we have them all
Oh, the
covered.
very first one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know we already covered it the other day, but I'd like to get them all recorded in one call. And I'm trying to remember. I won't remember what it was, but it was interesting. All each of these are interesting to look at because they're things that I'm sure some of you have run into, and you haven't really wondered how to assess was it successful or not. It's not always clear. So these are examples where it's a little bit fuzzy. Oh, and by the way, before we even look at these, the general guidelines are when it comes to voting, the general guidelines are if you participated in it and you succeeded in it in a particular time frame, then you should vote that way. But if you didn't participate in it, then these guidelines are extremely important. So for example, in a 24-hour time frame, the guideline is you should have been able to sell at a profit from the pre-sale price. From the pre-sale or private sale price, you should have been able to profit within a 1 hour time period in order for it to be voted successful in a 24-hour period. And now, if it's not a success solid for 24 hours, or sorry, solid for 1 hour in a 24-hour time frame, then it needs to have at least been able to sell at a profit for a full hour, even if it's broken up into like 15 minutes here, 5 minutes there. I wouldn't count uh, when it spikes up for 3 minutes and then it drops down below the private or pre-sale price. I wouldn't count that as a success, even for a moment. I wouldn't count it all because you just can't sell it when it's a wick, when there's like this huge spike and then it drops. You usually can't get a sell order in. So it needs to be at least for 5 minutes that it was up, so that you had time to get a sell order in it if you wanted to. And then like, again, for a full hour but it could be I haven't seen the situation, but just to give really clear direction, the guideline is if for in 5 minute increments, even if they were separate times, if you could add that up into a full hour within a 24-hour time frame, that would be a success. Again, that's a complicated, very unusual set of circumstances, but we just want to give clear guidance. Just typically, if it was able to sell at a profit from the pre-sale or private sale price for a full hour within a 24-hour time frame, then you're good. For the 7-day time frame, when you're voting on the 7 days, it should have been profitable for 24 hours. And again, that could be broken up into pieces. But if you could have sold at a profit from the pre-sale or private sale price in a 24-hour time frame, or within the 7-day voting time frame, then that would be a success. Within the 30-day voting time frame, it should be successful for a week. And again, that could be broken up into different days, et cetera. The all-time voting time frame is a little bit different. The all-time time frame, in fact, I want Jeremy to come in and speak on this because I think he really articulates it well. We really wanted to set that up so that no matter what had happened in the 24-hour, 7-day, or 30-day, whether it was successful or not, and whether people voted success or failure in those other timeframes. We wanted to provide a way to have a true reflection of what ended up happening in the end. So in other words, let's say something kind of bombed in the 24-hour, 7-day, and 30-day time frame, and everyone voted this was a failure. But let's say it was a unique situation where they just struggled, but their intention was to create a successful project. And on the 60th day, let's say they got it figured out and it took off and it became an amazing project. We wanted a way for us to say, if we noticed that, to vote on the all-time time frame and indicate this was ultimately in the end a successful project, and that should weigh into the color-coded ranking. That should weigh into a reflection of what actually happened. And another example might be a project is really successful on the 7-day, a 24-hour, 7-day, and 30-day time frame, and then it just totally bombs on the 31st day or the 90th day or the 6th month, and rug pulls in the end. We wanted a way to if we decided, we may or may not decide, but if people looked at that and go, you know what, the way this ended up turning out, it wasn't a success. It was just too nasty how it ended in the end. And if that was kind of a group, agreement, we wanted a way to be able to come in and have a reflection of that. So, and have that impact the color coded ranking. So these are kind of unique situations, but that's where the all-time time frame comes in, is to kind of adjust the ultimate deciding influence of that score. Is there anything you want to add to that, Jeremy? I think I've finally figured out how to explain it, but if there's anything in addition on the all-time that you want to clarify.
Yeah, no, that was a really good explanation. I think one of the things, though, that some people may question is if you're in the 7-day time frame, if it was successful for 24 hours and that was the very first 24 hours, is that still considered successful for the week, or do you ignore that first day? And do you ignore the first week when you're voting on the 30-day?
So that's a good question. I mean, I haven't thought about that. Do you have an opinion on that? I haven't thought about that particular scenario.
Yeah, I look at it as you would ignore the first time period. So if you're looking at the 30-day, it would be from the point where that week is over. Was there a chance in that time frame to still make a sale? So because I look at it from the perspective of somebody who's looking at projects for 30 days, as in, they might not want to have to check the project, daily or every week, but they can check it somewhere within that month and still be able to, sell at a profit.
It's a really good nuance. I would articulate it. I agree with you now that you bring that up. I would frame it this way. Tell me if this is accurate. Looking at the 30-day, we'll start with the 30-day. I think it's a little bit easier. Looking at the 30-day time frame, you only vote if it was successful. If it was successful for a week, which could be broken up, but in total a week, 7 days, starting from the start of the second week. Is that correct? The start of the second week is where you start looking for that success.
Yeah,
Can I ask a
I
question?
would say it could be just a couple of days in that period, and like not all 7 have to fall after the week, but there has to at least be some time after
Yeah,
the.
I'm trying to create really definitive rules. So if we don't give a specific number of days that it needs to be successful, then there's too much confusion, right? So we need to come up with a really clear, exact, quantifiable benchmark, or there'll be too much argument.
Okay, then I would agree with what you just said.
Okay. And I'm okay with that. And the reason why, I guess what I was going to try to say there was, the reason why is because we already have voting on the 7-day. And so that first week in the 30-day is already covered in the 7-day. Would that be accurate?
Right, that's the way I was looking at it.
Yeah.
And the only other thing with the overall, like you said, to answer your question, is there are times where, say it is a rug pull, et cetera, but we do plan on having a rug pull button, but that does not affect the Oracle. So we would still need a vote in the different categories in order to, to show that project was not successful in those other durations. So the overall category is allowed to be downvoted in the earlier periods, just so that we don't have to remember to come back 30 days later after a rug pull to vote down on that period.
Right. And then applying the same concept to your 30-day concept there. Let's look at the 7-day. So in much the same way, people can already vote on the first 24-hour time frame. So therefore, when we're voting on the 7-day time frame, we should exclude that first 24 hours because that's already accounted for with the 24-hour vote. So when we're
Yeah, I
looking at, yeah, okay, I think that's good. Does anybody have any thoughts on that or disagree with that? I never thought about that before. I really,
We
I hadn't
discussed
went
it.
into that. Go ahead.
We had discussed it as using the 7-day from day 2 to 8. But then there's a bit of confusion because you're going to be able to vote on day 7. So I'm wondering if it would be clearer just to move the 7-day vote to the day 8. So it's 24 hours is one day. And then
Okay.
your 7-day vote would be on day 8, but the 7-day wouldn't come up until the day 8. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Jeremy,
I
what do you
just
think
wanted
about
to make
that?
it clear and avoid
Yeah, no, I
confusion.
like that. That makes a lot of sense. We'll need to eventually write these out and really have it super, obviously clear to everybody. Just for those listening in, what we're doing, everything you see us doing has never been done before. And it's bringing tremendous value to the market as we improve it. And there's a lot of people bringing ideas to the table to improve it. And this is an example of that. But once we get super duper clear on the next level of improvement in this process, like we are today, we record it so that you have access to this information and you can join in and follow this discussion, but you don't need to. You could just wait until this evolves to the point of being super uber simple and we have it printed out and it's all explained in a really short video and you can read it. So that's coming, but this is the discussion we wanted to let people, be able to listen in on. Jeremy, do you agree with that? What Jesse had just ran through?
Yeah, we may want to call it the week instead of the 7-day, because if you're doing it on the 8th day and you call it the 7-day vote, that seems a little bit awkward.
I agree. I agree. We might need to change that to week, and then same thing with the month, right? Exclude the first week in the month vote, but call it month instead of 30-day.
Right, so that would become from day 9 out to the end of the month, basically.
Day 8 out, right?
Or day, yeah, well, you don't include the first 8 days at that point, because you have the 24 hours the first day, the
I
one
see
week
what
would be
you're
the
saying.
next 7 days, so the 30 days from day 9 on at that point.
Can I just recap it so I can just make sure that we all I heard correctly? So in the 24-hour, a good simple rule is if you had time to sell at a profit for 1 hour during the first day of the launch, it's considered successful in 24 hours. Is that correct?
Correct. And that 1 hour can be broken up into intervals as long as those intervals are more than 5 minutes.
So on the week, from one day, you have 1 day to sell at a profit. From that second day to day 8, at least one daily candle closing, at that during that 1 week period. Is that correct?
I don't consider it a daily candle closing, although that would probably cover most scenarios. I would say, 20, if as long as there was a 24-hour, there were 24 hours where you could have voted at a profit, or sorry, you could have sold at a profit. That doesn't need to be a 1 day candle. That could have been like 2 hours on this day, 8 hours on another day.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, but saying that that's correct though, from the profit from the second day to the 8th day.
That's what has been identified or clarified today. I think you guys might have been already doing it, but I had never thought about that. But
Yeah, and I want to just, and that's why I'm going to read what, I'm kind of reading it.
That's what I understand everyone's saying today, and I agree.
Perfect. And then the month would be if you can profit from the 9th to the 30th day for more than.
I think it's the 9th.
To the end of the month.
I understood it to be a full 30-day or a full month after the 9th. I don't know. Jeremy, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say 30 days past the prior period.
Yeah,
But it
30
could be
days
till
past.
the end of the month. I mean, I'm open to either way.
I would like it to be like for a month, right? So
So it'd
If it
be,
was only the 9th day to the end of the month, that's not a full month period. So I think it should represent a month period.
so ninth to the, from the 9th.
From the 9th day and then count 30 days out, I guess, or
Yeah.
about a month out. Yeah.
Yeah, so from the 9th day to the 39th day
30, right.
would be the monthly period.
It's
Yeah.
going to be very seldom that, we'd have to look that closely, right? But it's good to have these really quantified benchmarks for those cases.
I think it'll help with clarity too, when you do go to vote, if you change it to 1 day, 7 day, 30 day. Or I mean, a week, a day, week and a month instead of the day frames. That way, when a person looks and the 7 or the week vote isn't available, they know a week hasn't gone by yet.
Right.
And it's just gonna make it avoid confusion, because we kind of want to, we don't want to complicate it too much. We want it to be able to, like, we look at it and
I am
it's easy.
concerned. I am concerned about these rules, as smart as they are and as helpful as they are. They make a lot of sense, but I am concerned about the confusion factor of this. Like for me, it's not intuitive, even though now it makes sense now that you guys said it. It wasn't intuitive for me that you would omit the first 24 hours when you're voting on the 7-day, or that you would omit the first week when you're voting on the 30-day, but it makes complete sense. And so I think we have to implement it. I'm just saying, I can see how this is, it's going to add another factor of education necessary for voters. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I just want to point that out. We definitely don't want to add too much more on top of it, for sure. I'm a little concerned about how we teach this, but we'll get it figured out. I think ultimately the answer to that is not everybody should be encouraged, shouldn't be heavily incentivized to vote. We should be so in other words, paying people like we were before to vote these really high amounts, which incentivize anybody and everybody to vote just to get the better. Not a good idea. We should make it so that it's less of an incentive initially to start voting. Those that want to really learn how to do it, the personality types that really enjoy being a part of this process, can enter into it, get compensated something, even if they're losing more on gas initially. And then after they've developed, there'll be the type of personality that would take more time to learn how to vote properly, which is key to this. And then we could identify them and bring them into the higher incentive group, right? So once somebody has proven with a little bit of a history that they paid attention, they know how to do it, they've shown that they do it right, then they can start to get compensated a lot more. I just want to mention that that's going to be extremely important if we're, the more comprehensive this becomes, which this is making it more comprehensive. I think it's good, but that folds into this as far as making sure that voting is happening correctly, making sure we're attracting the right people to it. So with all that said, go ahead and let's tackle this first chart.
Okay, so this is Cato. And the question on this was, would this be considered profitable in 30 days? So we go to the chart and we were able to find the IDO price, which is 0.05, which is this blue line right here. And if we were to go to the daily, yeah, they had a pretty big pump at launch.
I'm assuming it was an IDO.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, it's common on the IDOs.
Yeah.
Because there's a massive built up demand to get into an IDO.
Right. Okay.
So the blue line represents the pre-sale price?
Yes, the IDO price, correct.
Okay, awesome. That's really helpful. Do we have any input for people that if they don't know if you don't know the pre-sale or private sale price and you can't find it in the Telegram or whatever, is that something we recommend they just don't vote on?
I'm open to discussion. The process that we've been using is, seeing if it's talked about in the chat, and then if it's not, seeing if we can find it on one of the launch pads, or seeing if we can find it on Pink Cell, and then just doing the math. So that just takes the voting process to a completely different level beyond, profitable in a day or a couple hours to, doing math and getting calculators out and moving decimal places. So I'm open to what everybody thinks.
I mean, it does, I feel like it needs to be mentioned probably here that we need to incorporate the pre-sale / private sale price into the information on the project. Maybe that's something that gets entered in when somebody's launching a project. What do you guys think?
I think that's a great idea.
And the reason why I recommend it on launching as opposed to before that is it could change, right? There could be something announced that was wrong that could end up the scout posted, and they could miss updating that. So I'm thinking it's something that's entered in when they're launching, because by that point it should be clear what it was.
Yeah, because
I agree with that as well.
if they're when we launch a project, it's asking us for the contract address. So if we know the contract address, we should also know the pre-sale or whatever price we're going to use.
Is there ever a scenario where a person's launching a project and it's impossible to find? It's not in the Telegram, you've asked around, or is it pretty much 99.9% we know that we can find that?
No,
I
not
never looked
always.
for- I never looked for it much. When I participated in projects, I didn't really care because I just paid attention to the chart. If the chart went up from where I bought it, I sold, and I'd make a 2x, a 10x, an 8x. I didn't really care exactly what I made. It was obvious I made a lot, and I would move on. You guys have been starting to do that a lot, and you just described a process you've been taking. I just giving context here. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Because the reason why I'm asking is because, Jeremy, I'm thinking that we could require they enter the pre-sale or private sale price when they launch it. And obviously we need to know, is it the pre-sale price? Is it the private sale price we're asking for? Is it both? But let's just, for now, benchmark that question, and let's call it pre-sale, private sale. When someone clicks launch it, should we require they put that in there? Or is that going to be disruptive because there's too many cases where it's just impossible to know?
I think when it's launching, I think there's a greater possibility of someone knowing the moment it's launching versus us going back and trying to find it.
Right.
I feel like it'd be easier to know on launch day than easier to know 30 days from launch day and us backpedaling trying to find it that way.
But here's the problem, right? So it's very easy for a scout to put in inaccurate information to make it look like it was a more successful project than it was.
Yes. So to that point, during the auditing process, yes, we click this link to take us to PooCoin, but we also go in Telegram and make sure we have the right contract address for that very reason. Information, if someone can put the wrong contract address, they can also put the wrong pre-sale price.
Well, yeah, but it's super easy to confirm that piece, right? I just go to Telegram or the website and I find out what the smart contract address is. It's a little bit harder to go see if they put in the right pre-sale or private sale price.
Yeah.
Let's benchmark this, but let's just note that we need to dig into that a little bit more. Like, where in the process do we put the pre-sale private sale price? Is it something that only an auditor does? Obviously that's going to take a lot of time. Or is it something that we require someone to do, like we just discussed? I think we better dig in a little bit more. We'll benchmark that and move on to the topic at hand with the charting, but let's just remember that to come back to that at some point soon.
Okay.
Future call. So looking at looking at this chart, because we know the pre-sale private sale price was down there real low, we can see it was clearly a success in 24 hours, right?
Yes.
And it was clearly a success in 7 days.
Yes.
And it looks like, let's see, where's the date start? Where's the date start where we start counting the 30 days? We decided on the 9th day, right?
Yes.
That's where you have that already, that line.
Yeah. So here's day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay. So from the 9th day to 30 days from there, which is to day 39. I mean, you can tell right now it was successful.
Yeah. Every candle is above the IDO price.
Yeah. So, so the big question so successful on 24, 7 day, 30 day, Now, a lot of people, I think you guys brought this one up. I can't remember, but it seems like you guys brought this one up saying a lot of people were voting down because they're looking at it, just looks like it just bombed.
Let's take a look. No, on this one, it looks like the only reason it's getting downvotes. Oh, well, yeah, it looks like someone was misinformed. The person who was downvoting was just misinformed. But no, the actual votes coming in are all positive.
Okay, so most people got it right. Okay.
Yes,
Well,
on this one, most people got it right.
Going and looking at the chart again, though, you could see how if people weren't thinking much about it, they could easily think it was a bad project.
Absolutely.
And I just want to address that, you need to know the pre-sale or private sale price before you make that conclusion. Now, some charts, you don't even need to know that. Some charts, it's just obvious it was a success. But before voting that something's a failure, you probably want to be able to confirm that it definitely was a failure. Here it was a success, even though it spiked way up, came way down. People might have a derogatory negative, conclusion when they see these kinds of things. They go, oh, it's a pump and dump. It's like there's a lot of opinions out there. I just want to say to everybody, just to get a little context and make this a little bit educational as you're assessing things. You really got to be careful about what you listen to in terms of other people's opinions, no matter how aggressive or excited they are when they express it. And two, you just need the facts before you can determine what's actually going on. This is a successful project. What that means is you would make millions and millions and millions of dollars in a very short period of time if you were able to predict that this was going to happen and you got involved before it did. I mean, you would just profit one project after another. And that's what, we call the intuitive oracle on the Vetter calendar. We call it the oracle because it's telling you the track record of the scout who's posted previous projects to get you as close as possible to just putting your research time into projects that have a high likelihood, of this. This is what we want. Vetter is what we want, is always successful. Anyone who got into the pre-sale or private sale price made money even after 90 days. If you can predict those projects, if you can research and find those projects, you're obviously wildly successful. So this is a success. You want to know about these projects before they happen. One other thing on this, some people are thinking, well, I bought at the top and it came down, therefore it's a shitty project. It's like, no, you just have a shitty strategy. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with buying as it's spiking or whatever, but you have no one else to blame but yourself. If you end up buying at a high price and it comes back down, it doesn't mean it was a bad project. This is a good project. Did a lot of people lose money? Yes. They need to change their strategy. We could talk about that in a different call. I'll just say really quickly, you don't jump in when a project first launches and it's on that spike. You don't jump in because something's spiking. You either got in before that happened in the pre-sale, or you have a strategy, for example, where you dollar cost average in, you come in with like 15% of what you plan to do in the beginning. So if it ends up at the spike, you still got 85% of your money to buy when it comes way back down. Then at the very least, you've minimized your losses if you do end up losing, and you have a much higher probability of catching the next leg up. A project like this didn't have a lot of opportunity for another leg up. So if that's why IDOs, you should be getting in on before they launch, not after they launch, because you get a lot of this in an IDO because there's a lot of pent up demand. It's really risky to jump in on that first hour, that first day on an IDO. One thing, guys, we didn't cover is what about fair launches? I'm assuming, we know that this is an IDO. We knew that going into this. We do need to remember that there's a big outstanding question of how do we assess the success or failure of a project if there wasn't a pre-sale and there wasn't a private sale, and it literally just launched on PancakeSwap for the very first time. Let's remember to cover that today at the end. For now, unless we come across a chart that we know is a fair launch, if so, we'll address that then. If not, as we go through these charts, let's remember we do need to cover that question. I think that's a little bit more challenging to answer. So we'll move forward with these charts, assuming that there's a pre-sale or private sale price, or at least covering it from that context, remembering that there is that other fair launch situation.
Okay. Okay, the next one is Pegasus.
And thanks for doing this, Ryan. This is super helpful.
You're welcome. Okay. Let's let me see.
So
Day
just to
6.
add in real quick, this one is marked as a fair launch.
Okay, we're already there.
Well, that was quick. Okay,
All right, we'll
let's
tackle it now. Awesome. I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget to address that. If there weren't any charts that were fair launches, but if this is a fair launch, that makes it easier to tackle.
okay.
So we see that warning. So this one definitely looks ugly. And I hope people that are new don't think that just because this is ugly, that all fair launches are ugly. They're not. This is, it looks like a standard, either a pump and dump or a honeypot. A honeypot is when nobody can sell, or you can't sell hardly any. Maybe you can sell like a very small amount, but you try to sell a large amount and they've got a block on it. A honeypot is basically a running off with everybody's money. Now, can you hit refresh? Is that what you were trying to do? It's not quite displaying properly, is it?
It's displaying on my side.
But I
Yeah,
think
that's the whole chart, Mike. It stops at that point.
Yeah, it
that-
just stops at the 9th.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But there's also a space in between the, oh, I see. That's the green. I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this was a fair launch meeting. There was no pre-sale or private sale. It launches on an exchange as the first introduction. It pumps up probably because nobody could sell, right? Is that what we're kind of presuming here?
So that's where the confusion comes in. But I think if you change the chart to not show the US dollar amount, you might see that those points that look like sells are because of a drop in US dollar value. So on the upper right of your chart, click on USD and change that to BNB, and we may see it's all up and to the right. Nobody sold.
Yeah. So that's a honeypot.
Correct. Okay.
It's definitely a honeypot.
Honeypot alert. So rug pull button. Rug pull button. So again, for those that are new, a honeypot is where you see all these buys, you see more buys, and then you see a sell because they're just taking everybody's money. Nobody could sell. And what Jeremy just pointed out is it's easier to notice that nobody could sell when you put the chart on BNB, because it's really interesting. I mentioned this on another call earlier today. I think people need to know this. If you have your chart set to USD, you might see red bars like a sell order that was actually a buy. And that happens when BNB goes down because these tokens are pegged to BNB's price. I'll say that one more time. Well, in fact, Ryan, go ahead and change that BNB back to USD, and you guys are going to notice little sell. It looks like sell orders in there. See those little red bars? And someone might think, oh, people can sell. No, those are buys. It's just BNB's price went down. So it looks like that. So I would go ahead and put it back on the BNB, and you'll see all there were buy orders until you see the big red bar. That's when the owners of this just stole everybody's money, sold everything and ran off. So we call that a honeypot, which is also a rug pull. But this is a special kind of rug pull. They call it a honeypot, where they're just running off with the pot of honey, basically. And you can't get anything out. Now, I want to warn people, you could also run into the situation where there are sell orders happening, but they limit it to a certain point. That's more sophisticated, not as often seen, but I have been in projects where I could sell 0.1 BNB worth, but if I tried to sell everything I had, it wouldn't let me. If I tried to sell half of what I had, it wouldn't let me. So I couldn't hardly get out of my position. And then it looks like there's sell orders happening, so you have to watch out for that too. And that could also be considered a honeypot. And then they run off with everybody's money. So obviously this was a failure. You would be voted as a failure on the 24-hour, the 7-day, the 30-day, and the 90-day. Whether you saw this on a fair launch or where there was no pre-sale or private sale, or you saw this when there was a pre-sale or private sale, it wouldn't matter. It's a honeypot, it's a rug pull, and this was a failure across the board for all those different timeframes. Any questions or additional comments on that, guys?
So Mike, this is Jesse. For this one, we can throw in not profitable overall.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
we want to put as many markers on this to indicate it was a failure. And I want to, in case we're, if there's a scout who posts, loads a project like this up, it's not harming them to do that. It's like we're all working together to make the system better. If a scout with good intentions posts a project that ends up doing this, like it doesn't mean the scout did something wrong. We have a system that's going to happen, but we have a system here to encourage that scout to learn and to improve, and it still could happen even from time to time. I'm at the point now where it's rare, very rare, that I'll get into a rug pull. You can start to be able to recognize them, but it's not a bad thing. I got into plenty of rug pulls early, happened several times, but I was still successful overall by a long shot. So it's just part of the process, and it's part of. I just don't want people to think that, you know, by down voting on a scout, you're doing something bad or towards them, or that they're a bad scout. It's a process, and it gives them a means to learn and improve in a system that reflects that, but they're not going to be harmed by that in their ranking. If they start to post good projects, it's going to start to go up. All right, next one.
Okay, this one is mini tennis. And the question on this one was initial price was 0.000003, which chart price is never above. There were 2 green candles, which made someone think that the project was profitable, but it was never above that initial price. Please clarify buying the dip. If it's below the initial price, can it be deemed profitable?
So when it comes to voting on the success or failure of a project on Vetter, it's not about being able to buy on the dip, unless it's a fair launch, in which case we'll earmark that more nuanced discussion later. Or unless, is this a new fair launch, or was this private or pre-sale type thing?
It had a pre-sale.
Okay, so it would be a different answer, and maybe we should approach both answers. If it had a pre-sale or private sale, you know, and it was never above the pre-sale price, then it's a failure. Just because you could come in and buy on the dip, like for example, they might have bought down there, right? You know, right where his cursor is, and just because you were able to come in later, buy on the dip, make a profit, that's not a successful project, because this is a very dangerous project. Like, you know, like to come in on, and because it was a pre-sale, the rule needs to be you had to be able to profit from the pre-sale, because the idea behind Vetter in most cases, when we're talking about pre-sales and private sales, is to be able to get in on a pre-sale or private sale and have a good chance of, you know, really high chance of being able to succeed. So it's about that. And here you could have easily not been able to do. You wouldn't have been able to do that at all, because none of this action was above the pre-sale price. That's horrible. So I don't even know how that's possible. I mean, it's only possible if they airdropped a lot of their tokens to a previous group of people who just dumped them, or airdropped or got a bunch of tokens themselves, the developers of this, and dumped them right away. I don't know how you get below, you know, the pre-sale. Can you think of any other scenarios, Jeremy, where it's always below the pre-sale price? That's just really odd, unless they airdropped a bunch of tokens.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple scenarios where it can happen. They could have messed up their liquidity and put it in at the wrong amount. So that's possible. They could have just dropped a whole bunch of tokens outside of what was available in the pre-sale. So any of their influencers or people that they paid off, or the owners, dropped way more tokens than what was even available in the pre-sale. So that
Right.
doesn't matter what the liquidity is, it dropped it below it.
Right. But definitely not a success.
No, never.
Right. So if somebody bought after the dip, made a profit, congratulations. But because it was a pre-sale, we do not want to have that vote as a positive, because this isn't good for people to get into. So we don't want it to help, you know, we don't want it to contribute to our ranking system to encourage people to get into this. Again, we call it the intuitive oracle, because it's helping you predict what's going to happen, and you want it to weight projects that are going to succeed. This doesn't. This is the opposite. It failed. Great job for those that got in later, bought on the dip, but it's not a success because it never would have been a success for pre-sale private sale people. Now let's pretend it's a fair launch. I know it wasn't, but can anybody weigh in on how we should deal with something like this if it's a fair launch and there was no pre-sale price? How do you determine if it was a success or failure?
I think at that point, because you would not have that blue bar up there, you're just looking at overall, was it possible within those timeframes that you spelled out at the beginning of the call to have made profits, right? So
Okay.
was there enough time? You know, you're looking at the 1 hour chart. You'd have to go down to the 5 minute chart, for example, to see if there was long enough period of time to have actually bought low and sold high, right?
Yeah, so was there an hour? It doesn't look good for that first. Is it? There you go.
Yeah, so this is the minute chart.
Like if it just basically plummets like that, that's not good.
Yeah, it doesn't look good to me.
You had a couple of seconds.
Looks like failure to me. If this was a fair launch, I don't know how we quantify it. I mean, where could have you? I mean, if somebody, I guess the thing is, I guess there was a dip and a place to profit, but I mean, it looks really dicey.
Yeah,
It looks really, it needs to be going the other direction, doesn't it? On a fair launch to be deemed successful.
definitely.
Yeah. So I think we'll have to work on quantifying those rules, but just for now on the fair launches, if it's shaped this way, I would say it's a failure. It needs to be going up in general, right?
Up and
Does
to the
everyone-
right.
because this is way too dangerous. Granted, somebody might have come in and bought on one of those little drops and it goes up and they sold, but it's just too dicey. It's too dangerous. I would never recommend anyone gets into something like this if I knew the future and knew this is what it was going to do. And I said, oh, it's a great project, get into it. I mean, the chances of them succeeding is too low.
Yeah, I mean, there's no indication for them to know where the bottom's at,
Exactly.
because it never even broke. It never even broke these 1 minute highs. So
No,
like,
way too
there's no
strong,
indication for them to say, hey, it's safe now to buy.
Yeah.
Well, if you
So-
go further to the right, like where you're at now, Ryan, theoretically in that dip, there were lots of times that, I mean, you could have sold if you wanted that minute of a profit and you could get out of it quick enough. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, because it does stay above that particular bottom for a little while, but good luck catching that bottom and catching
Right.
a point where you could get out of it,
Right.
Yeah. I
The
think
starting price on that, Ryan, was that in BNB or was it in USD?
What was that?
The starting price, when you looked at the starting price on this?
well, we're talking about fair launch. So there was no starting price.
Yeah, I know, but I'm thinking,
Or do you mean the day, like if we're talking about, oh, go ahead.
Right.
I'll let you.
no, it's okay.
I'm not clear what
Um,
you mean by starting price. Go ahead. What do you mean by starting price?
Well, I know we're talking about a fair launch, so I probably should have asked that question prior to the fair launch
Yeah, I don't
scenario.
want to confuse everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll retract.
Hey, this is Jesse. Could we maybe standardize just looking at the B and B chart instead of changing? I don't know. It just seems like we should pick one.
B&B
one field.
probably is a clearer depiction of what the movement is doing. In other words, yeah, when you have it on B&B, a red line really means it went down. Like, the token went down. There was a sell order. So, I mean, from a fair launch perspective, I would definitely vote this a failure. I don't know how to perfectly quantify it as well as we can do with the pre-sale private sales. And I think that's kind of a work in progress. But again, if you were to flip this, invert it so that it was going up instead of down, that would have been a success. It's the general, I think on a fair launch, in general, it shouldn't be going down. So I think that's the rule on fair launches in general. I mean, obviously there'll be room for debate when it's like up a little, then down a little more, and then up a lot, and then down. Again, I think the general direction should be up. So 24-hour period, this was definitely down. At 7 days, if we look at a 7-day period, from day 8 to day, whatever it is, 15 or whatever it is, 7 days out from day 8. From day 8, a week forward, was it up or down? Let's just take a look at that really quick. Starting on day 8, did it go up or did it go down most of the time? And, and again, I would say on a fair launch, if it went, generally up most of the time, that would definitely be a winner. If it's unclear, then we have to look at more rules. I think fair launches is just pretty simple like that. So where's day 8 start? Right about there. So, that looks like failure to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. All right. Next one.
All right. Okay, the question on this one is, would this be considered profitable for 24 hours? Can't find definitive initial price, was in the Telegram, and there was mention of 0.37. Before we got on the call, I got on Telegram, I saw 0.35, so it's same ballpark.
Okay.
So let's the hour.
And right. Okay. Was it an IDO? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The general shape of an IDO. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, guys. It's just from a strategy perspective, you want to get into IDOs before they open, or, a few days after they launch, because they almost always have this huge spike. That's why people love IDOs, because if you get into the pre-sale, you just start selling anywhere in there and you make a huge return. I got 1,000x once. It was an IDO. But
In this case, there was no spike. That was just a drop from the starting point.
Was it?
Just a second. That was a. Oh no, you're right. Sorry, I thought I pasted the wrong number in there. I wanted to double check that. Yeah, 0.37.
So this was another one of those scenarios. I wasn't paying attention to the blue line. The blue line is the starting point. Yeah, I mean, so I don't know how anyone could say this was a success if its starting point is the blue line. That was the pre-sale price. I don't even know how this is possible. Again, if launchpads are doing IDOs, if a launchpad's doing this, I don't know why anybody would be on that launchpad. Like, I don't get how this can happen other than they royally, effed up, or like messing up the liquidity or some ridiculous setup that, more than likely this was airdropping tokens or the team dumping tokens. Like, do you agree, Jeremy? This is a very bad sign. I don't understand how a launchpad could stay in business to launching like this.
Yeah, if you look at it strictly from the standpoint of IDO, you're absolutely right. I think some people had questions because, let's say you didn't know what that starting price was and you just looked at this chart as if you were somebody coming in after the fact, like a fair launch.
Right.
There was a 2-day period where you could have made money in between day 8 and 9. There was a rise from the low.
Right.
So they're saying there was plenty of time there to have made a profit if you bought in after the fact. So is that successful in that case?
Now, would you agree, because we know what the starting price was, this was definitely a failure?
Yeah, if you're looking at it from making sure that an IDO on our system has the correct.
Well, I mean, regardless
ranking.
of whether it's an IDO or not, because we know the pre-sale price. And because, can you bring that blue line back, Ryan?
Yeah, no, that's what I was clarifying, is because it's an IDO and we want our system, the Oracle, to be able to say whether that was a good IDO or not. There is a pre-sale price. Therefore, this would be a failure from an IDO standpoint.
I know, I just didn't want to confuse newbies. We could remove IDO from this conversation and it's still clear because we know the pre-sale price. I just don't want them to think there's something really specific about IDO right now. There's nothing going on with that makes this unique to IDOs.
Well, the only reason I push back on that is because there was that initial day, it was possible to make money.
And what I'm saying is, even if that's the case, regardless of whether it's an IDO or not, because we know, the pre-sale price was 0.37 and it was never above that, it is a failure, IDO or not.
Right, and that's because our system is to find pre-sales and pre-launches, and the goal is to be part of that pre-launch. It's not talking about looking at charts after the fact yet.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah, I just want to make that distinction, that because people that are new, they hear the word IDO, they hear what we say, and they think, oh, this is something about IDOs. It's like, well, no, because we know the pre-sale price, whether it's an IDO or not, the fact that it was never above the pre-sale price means this was a failure, even though there was days where you could buy on the dip. It was just like that other chart we were looking at.
Yeah, just like the last one.
If this was a fair launch, there'd be more to discuss here. If this was a fair launch and there was no pre-sale or private sale price, and because somebody could have entered in on day 8 and made a good profit, we have to ask ourselves, we'd have to look closely at it and see, is there a full 24 hours after that point that somebody could have made a profit? And it kind of looks like, there might have been. So it's questionable, but it might have been a success in 7 days if it was a fair launch.
Yeah, that's exactly why I was saying IDO specifically. It's because if you look at it from the fair launch standpoint, it might have been a different answer.
I know. I just want to make sure newbies don't think IDOs have anything to do with it, because even if it wasn't an IDO, what you just said would be the case. In other words, if there's a pre-sale price, that's the key word, pre-sale. If there's a pre-sale price, I'm just talking to newbies here, so they're super clear. If there's a pre-sale price, then this is the case. Failure if it doesn't ever go out, if it doesn't meet those benchmarks we talked about earlier, it's a failure. So Jeremy, just
No, yeah, I agree with you. Yep.
Yeah,
I just wanted to point out, if you were looking at it from the fair sale, that might be different, but you're
Yeah,
absolutely
like,
right. If it's a pre-sale and there's a pre-sale price as a standard, if it's not above that pre-sale price, that's a problem.
Yeah, and I just want to point, because every IDO is a pre-sale, but not every pre-sale is an IDO. I don't know if that helps at all, but for newbies listening in, but that's why I'd rather defer to the word pre-sale, because every IDO is a pre-sale, but there's also other pre-sales that what we're talking about would, pertain to. So that one's pretty easy, because it has a pre-sale. It's a little more discussion could come into play if it's a fair launch, but I would still think it was probably a failure. But we'll have to have more follow-up discussion on just fair launches at some point. We won't dive too into all the nuances on fair launches today.
Okay, the next one is, I think it's Galaxy War. Yep, Galaxy War. And this was this is a great example of the chart looking different than what really happened. This was an IDO, and at launch it looks like it just tanked.
Yeah, I don't know how a launch pad could stay in business long if their projects don't go up.
Okay, so here's the IDO price down here, and without that information, it looks like it went up and then just fell off.
Okay, well, I mean, at least it was above the line initially.
Yeah.
I mean, this is common with IDOs. You have an opportunity, and how many minutes or hours did they have an opportunity to make a pretty big profit?
So we're on the hour, so they actually had 4 hours.
Okay, so that's definitely a success in the 24-hour time frame.
Yes, and on the 7-day, because we're still above.
Yeah, so just so people, I want to clarify what I just said. Like, this is up. Like, I just said, like, an IDO is not going to stay in business if they don't go up. But you have to understand, even though this looks like it tanked, it is still up. It's up from the pre-sale price, and that's why they'll stay in business. This is a success. This is
Yeah.
become a millionaire if you were able to get into all of these at a high allocation. If you were able
Yeah,
to get,
this is sitting at a 44 million market cap.
yeah, this is an amazing project. So people have to understand, just because it looks like this. And by the way, if you got in late and you bought high and now you've lost a bunch of money because it's dropped, it doesn't mean the project wasn't amazing. This is a successful project. You just need to change your strategy. That's what people don't understand. Like with Vetter, I keep coming back to Vetter because it was wildly successful, but you still have people complaining because if you buy at the peak of any project anywhere, including Bitcoin, and then you sell low or are waiting while it's low and like thinking it's a bad, Bitcoin's bad or that project's bad. No, it's your strategy's bad or your perspective is wrong. You're not, that's what has to change for to be successful, because anyone who got in on the pre-sale here has succeeded. This is a successful project, whether you had a bad strategy or not. So that looks good all the way across, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is
You
a
know,
success on all time frames. This is a really successful project, even though it looks ugly.
Yeah. Okay, next up is,
Do we know what Launchpad that was, by the way? I do want us to get in the habit of, we don't have to do it today, but getting used to trying to remember which ID, which Launchpads are constantly spitting out winners. Doesn't
no,
say the Launchpad there. So guys, those of you who are scouts and vetters, please report to us any launch pads that are consistently producing winners that aren't in our drop down, so we can get them added to our drop down, because we want that to be here. It's really important.
okay.
Did the Vetter list it?
No, I'm the same. I didn't, this was one of my earlier
Oh, this
projects.
is yours. Okay.
Yeah, just so happened to be mine. I did not list the, well, at least up here, I didn't list it.
Is it launch zone? I think I see it there.
Well, I found it on Launch Zone. Let's see.
Well, we can do it later. We can follow up on it later. I just just want everyone listening to this replay to know, like, we want to populate our launch pad drop down. When you're a scout, entering it in, we definitely want to know that launch pad. So if you're not seeing it, if it's a crappy launch pad or you don't know, like, I don't know that you need to tell us to add it. But if you're consistently seeing a launch pad perform well, like this did, and a lot of them do, launch pads that stay around that are, they got to produce winners. They're not going to stick around. So if you consistently see that you got a winning launch pad, let us know. We'll add it to the drop down so everybody can get to know that launch pad.
Okay. Okay, this one is BitRides. And the question for BitRides is, or the comment, chart drops at launch, but if you bought the dip, you could have profited at the end of the day. Let's see what
Yeah,
this
I
looks like.
posted that. This is Jesse. I should have edited that, but I got busy. After we clarified that we were just gonna go with pre-sale prices for the voting. Obviously I should have edited that out of there.
Oh, okay. But it is successful for 24 hours.
Is it?
We got an hour candle above, or do I need to change time frame
It'd be interesting to look at that hour, yeah, broken down. Maybe
to
you're
see how it
right.
actually looks?
Or I would do 5-minute time frame, but yeah, either or. So, man, what a drop. That's crazy. So let's see. So each candle's 5 minutes, right?
Yes.
So that's only 25 minutes. So 25 minutes isn't enough for it to be successful. Needs to be an hour. Does everyone agree with that? I mean, that's been the guideline.
I agree.
Need-
I like to look at what we see on the platform, our platform that we're, just to kind of see where the votes came in.
So the people who voted that it was successful, may have sold and had made a profit in those like 5 minutes, 25 minutes, right?
Right.
Um, so that's okay. Like if you personally profited, but if but in total, this looks like a not successful project in
Right.
total. Let's go ahead and, okay, yeah.
I have a technical question, Mike. So on the 5 minutes, we can count, there's 4 minutes above, or sorry, 20 minutes above the price. But when we go to the hour chart, it shows an actual hour closed above.
Yeah, I don't get that. That's why I always break it down. Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, why does this hour candle close above if it's only above for 25 minutes?
Maybe the first candle is just it started right before the top of the hour.
But
Yeah,
you
either
think-
that or it's looking at the summation, like more people in that hour sold above that line than didn't, even though, partway through the hour it dropped. Or like you mentioned, the hour could have included time prior to when you could have actually sold.
But Jeremy, do you agree we should be looking at the 5-minute chart on something like this? And that would give us,
Yes, yeah, I do.
an accurate depiction of actually how long was it up?
Yep.
Okay.
Which looks like just 20, not even 25 minutes. So unless you personally profited in this should be voted down. And overall, it could go either way.
Yeah, so you can see the lines in the background. It shows that big drop candle was the beginning of a new hour. The other ones all closed above. That's why it looked like the first hour closed above.
Right. But it was,
The
only,
big drop was technically only 20, 25 minutes in, but that showed during that hour time frame.
and we could change our rule. Like, we could say, if you're looking for success in the 24-hour time frame and it was successful for 15 minutes, then it was a success. I think we should keep it to an hour for now until more time goes by and we gather more feedback on that. You guys have any thoughts on that? I still think it should be an hour right now, but I wouldn't be against longer term. I wouldn't be against changing that to like 15 minutes because a lot of people are looking just for that moment where they can sell at a profit. But I'm a little uncomfortable just jumping into shortening it.
So I've got a twist and a question for you, Mike. What if during that first hour there was like a super big sales tax or something? So even though you could sell and it was above the line, you still wouldn't have profited. What are your thoughts on that?
And it shouldn't be a successful project. And we just have to count on feedback like that in the voting. People can give comments in order to determine that. So yeah, it's not a success just because it's above the line if they had a really high sales tax that prevented you from still profiting. And those will be a little trickier. I don't know that they're as common anymore to have the really high ones for too long, but like with ours, we had a high sales tax that first part of the day, but our price went so high it would have compensated for that by a long shot, so it wouldn't have been in question. But with some of these projects that have like a 50% sales tax or 80% sales tax, and they're not, they don't go high enough to compensate for that, that might be confusing.
Right. That's all I would be concerned about on this particular chart is even though it started above the line, at that point, even if you got an hour's worth in, I would at least look at that and factor it in myself. But
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I would be curious, the people who said this was successful, I'd be curious, like they couldn't have made much, right? Because we know there was probably a sales tax.
Is it possible that the people who said that this was successful was based on seeing the 1 hour above?
Yeah, could be.
Because before our conversation just now, I would have thought this was successful based on what we covered. And so I wonder if maybe that's what they're thinking as well, because there's a lot of upvotes.
Yeah, this was a long time ago though, right? We had people just voting like crazy.
Oh, sure.
Before we audited anything.
Oh, you're right. This is back in December.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely go on the 5-minute time frame on the 24 hours, especially when a project dumps like this. Like just looking at the chart, it's just like pretty nasty, right? In general, because it drops below the pre-sale price. Like again, Vetter is always above the blue line. Never for even a second was it below the blue line. Whenever you have something that drops below the blue line on the first day, like even the second hour, you want to bring a really high level of skepticism to the voting for it, because it's like it needs to be above, it should be above the blue line if it's a confident vote. Otherwise, it's like, okay, what's really going on here? And in this case, I go to the 5 minutes and I could say, okay. I mean, it still was a failure in 5 minutes, but I mean, your spidey senses should really kick in if you see it's below the blue line in the first day at all. Like that's pretty bad if it's staying there.
Yeah.
Means something really weird's going on.
Okay, perfect.
I wouldn't want to be in a project like that.
Right. Okay, next up. This one is Dogeverse.
Already suspicious.
I put this one in because the last call about charts, you talked about the quick pump and dumps where low market caps and the owners just destroyed people at the start.
Yep.
So that's kind of what this one looks like to me. Is a pump and dump, and then they burned everybody.
Yeah, so I looked and looked and looked and I couldn't find
The price.
the price. So we're kind of flying in the dark on this one.
And you're on a 5 minute chart. So how many minutes was it, high? Like not knowing where high is, but we see it spiking. How many minutes was it spiked?
I'll go to
5
the minute.
minutes.
Yeah, I'll go to the minute chart.
Well, no, that's okay. Sorry. Put it back
Oh.
on. Yeah, no, you had it right. I just was just thinking out loud.
Oh, okay.
So 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? I mean, to me, this is a bomb. I mean, without knowing the pre-sale price, I would say this is a bomb.
Yeah.
For something like this, I would, if I couldn't figure out what the pre-sale price was, I would just put my cursor down there and guess. So go ahead and guess where you think the pre-sale price was. It was either there or a little under that, probably. Somewhere there, maybe a little under that, right? Probably around there.
Okay.
It could be above that, but so we're talking 5, 10, 15 minutes, it already starts sinking under, right?
Yeah.
And then another 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and then we're back down to it. I don't think this was up above that line for an hour.
No, definitely not.
So for me, this is a fail. Would everybody agree? Because it's just, even though we don't know the pre-sale price, it probably wasn't much lower than that. It could have been higher than that. And even if we put it there, which is generous, it dropped. It was only each candle's 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's already below. So we didn't get to an hour yet. I won't count that first one because it's right on the line. So we got another 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20, maybe 25 more minutes on top of that. We don't make our hour. And because it goes down underneath that and just stays down, like you can pretty much know it's a bad project when it does that. Again, just as a comparison, when Vetter launched, it went up, right? It spiked too. And it spiked to like almost 40, I don't know, 20 or 25X or something like that. And then it came down and it didn't get lower than like 4 or 5X within that first major dip. It was still 4 or 5 times above, the pre-sale price when it dipped at the lowest. This one goes down and touches the pre-sale price. We were still 4 or 5X above. That's a huge difference. Not twice, not 3 times, like 4 or 5 times. And then it goes way up again for weeks, touching almost 40X, never dropping lower than 10X for like 6 weeks. The blue line was so far away. And then like in the worst case scenario, as it continues on for months, the lowest price it ever got to was 3X above the line, never touched the line. So, that's a good project, which are rare. Bad projects immediately go below the pre-sale price in the first day and then never come up again. That's what we want to stay away from. Again, we want quantifiable guidelines. This doesn't stay up for an hour, even in the 24-hour period. So unless somebody disagrees or I'm missing something, this is a bomb. This is a failure, 24-hour, 7-day, 30-day.
Okay. Next up is eFun. And this question is, would this be considered profitable in 7 days? The price is right here.
I'm just thinking out loud, guys, but I was just talking to Phyllis before this. I know this is getting a little off track, but it isn't actually. It might sound like it is. I'm now thinking we probably want to make a pretty big investment into, vote auditing in short term, so that people realize, and then find a sustainable model longer term, but it will set the precedent and allow us to know what admin tools we need and stuff. What we want the calendar to have are great projects on it, not just like 40 projects in a day that aren't great. And the color coded ranking system, if the voting is accurate, there's going to be a bunch of people at red if they're consistently posting bad projects. A lot of people will be at beige. There should be very few green and purples. And there should be probably a lot less projects, because there should just be a lot better projects. That's what we want it to be. So I'm just seeing they're going to make a much larger investment, Phyllis, into short term and to vote auditing, so we can set that precedent. Because if people are red, they're going to get they're not going to make anything posting as a scout. They're going to either improve or stop posting, which either or is what we want. So this is above the line for a long time, right?
Yep. So this
So
is we're on the hour chart right now.
So definitely a success. So again, those watching, the blue line is the pre-sale price. So definitely a success in the first 24 hours. It doesn't look like 7 days though.
No.
So first 24 hours of success, failure after that.
Correct.
So again, guys, those listening in, you go to the Intuitive Oracle for those of you at tier 4 or higher. And when you're selecting to show projects that scored high, like purple and green, from scouts that are purple and green within a 24-hour period, that scout's projects would weigh into their score favorably on this one, as it should. Because some people pick projects that attract a lot of attention in 24 hours, do well a lot, and then bomb after that. And some investors, that's what they want. They're excited, they bought it, they want a quick payoff, and then they're gone. People like me, not so much. When I buy into something, I don't want to have to, change my schedule to be watching to sell it in that 24-hour time frame. I want a longer duration, so I'm not going to be selecting 24-hour time frame very often. I want 7 days, more time to be able to catch selling it at a profit. But this serves those people. This is a favorable project, and that would reflect for those looking for these kinds of projects that you definitely could make a great profit in 24 hours. And after that, you don't care. This is for people that are definitely planning to watch what happens right away. Again, it's a little bit too short for me, but a lot of people don't mind that.
Okay. Next project is Spidey Floki. Okay, and this says very short window at launch for the 24-hour period. Price is right here.
So I would put that on the 5-minute chart. Is it to see if we got an hour within 5-minute intervals? Oh, wait.
It doesn't look like it ever was above.
Oh, it was a moment ago. We'll let it load here. Can't quite tell what's going on. I think it was above initially. No? Huh. Not sure what I saw earlier. It looked like it was above the line initially. So, I mean, this is a fail. Can you put it back on the whatever you had it on a moment ago? Was it an hour?
Let's see here for an hour.
Yeah.
When he initially double clicks, Mike, it puts the blue line where he's at, and then once he pastes the value, it moves it.
Gotcha.
So he double clicked right there and it looked like it was above at first.
So nothing confusing about this one. This is a fail on all timeframes
Yes.
because it's below the pre-sale price.
Okay. Next up is Trust Floki.
How many more after this, just to see where we're at?
We have 3 more. And of those 3, one is more so just a technical. How do you want us to handle situations like this?
Okay.
Okay. So this is Trust Floki, and the price there.
I mean, look at all these market caps, 31,000. They're so low. A lot of people like these kinds of projects. I try to stay away from these types that a lot of these kinds of names are typical for these kinds of projects.
Okay, so we're on the 5-minute, and here was the pre-sale price. So this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 5-minute candles above price.
Yeah, so a success in the 24-hour, in the 24-hour time frame, if everyone agrees.
Yes,
Yeah, and then a fail after that.
correct.
And again, there's a group of people out there that love these projects. If they can make a profit in 24 hours, they're happy. The intuitive oracle will help you find those. It's not for me. I like 7 days. I want a little bit more time. I don't want these kinds of projects, but these are highly successful for a lot of people in this market.
Okay, next up is Radio Hero. Okay. And the price is right here.
Guys, I'm going to be right back. I'll let you guys kind of do this one, and I'll be right back. I'll take a quick break.
Okay. Okay, so 1 hour. Okay. So there's an hour closing above, so we can check the 5 minutes to see how much time is actually above the pre-sale price. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 candles above the pre-sale price. That's 35 minutes. So does everyone agree that this would not be profitable within the first 24 hours?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I guess in our as part of our guide for voting, whenever we see something, just making a note to, because this is another example of this candle closing above, but then when we look at the 5, it's only 35 minutes above. It's not a full hour.
Well, what's interesting is later on, it comes back above.
Yes,
What
it does.
time frame was that? Is that the 7-day period?
Yes. So if we go, let's look. And I brought this one up because we do have a full candle close on the daily on the 3rd day above, which would indicate profitable for the 7-day time frame.
Correct. It would be unprofitable in 24 hours, profitable for 7-day, unprofitable for 30, it looks like.
Right. It's back and forth.
Yep.
Okay. Let me write that down here. Okay.
What did this one end up being?
So this was. Oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
This one actually was low in the 24-hour period, but the 7-day actually had enough time closing above the line.
Nice. See, I wouldn't mind a project. I don't mind a project like that because I have time. So in the intuitive Oracle, this won't come up in the 24-hour searches, but it would come up in the 7 days. I mean, it would impact their score. So out of people that are picking these kinds of projects, I would find them, and I would be happy to find one like this.
Okay, next up is Meta Doge Swap.
Something tells me there won't be much swapping happening there.
To find out, huh? Okay. So here is the pre-sale price, and we're on the hour chart. So we have a handful of hours all
Yeah,
above.
so that was successful in 24-hour period because it's above the pre-sale price for plenty of hours.
Yes.
And then
And
if we go
then-
from day 8 to day 15 to get a good snapshot of the week of the next following week after the day.
Yeah, definitely profitable for the seven day.
Definitely profitable on the 7 day.
Yeah.
And then it's a fairly new project, correct? Is that why it ends right there?
Let's see.
Or did it die? Is it over?
Yeah, that's today's date. So yeah, it's only been going for since the 17th.
Okay, so it's running into territory of maybe not being a success in 30 days, but we got 30 days to find out.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, I posted this one. I didn't have the pre-sale date. I just wanted an example of one that was a slow burn. It didn't do so well in the first few days and then popped off real fast.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, successful. It was successful in 24 hours. It looks like there were plenty of hours there you could sell, and really successful in the 7 days, which I like those. You know, those are ones I get around to looking at a few days later, and I would have been able to make a nice profit on this one.
Sorry, my my daughters were excited. I was muted for a bit. Okay, next project. So this is this doesn't happen often, Mike and Jeremy, but just wondering how we want to handle situations like this where we start going down the rabbit hole of just trying to find a chart, and whether it's the wrong telegram, the wrong contract address, we finally find a chart in the telegram that we think is right. However, it's a project that launched months ago, and it's not the actual project that launched, a couple days.
Well, when we have the messaging set up where you guys will be able to message the person who posted it, I would find out from them what's going on, why the discrepancies. And if there's no response, then I would just, downvote it. That's my recommendation.
Okay, so just see what they say, and
Yeah, we're a few weeks off from having, we might bump that up in priority, but we're a few weeks off at this moment of you guys being able to message that scout and or vetter, get more input. Between now and then, honestly, if you can't figure it out, I would just leave it alone, because if you see a scout involved with that more than once, you might want to blacklist them until you guys can talk to them.
okay.
Does everyone agree with that? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here.
I agree.
There's someone's repetitively doing that, we need to get them off, right? If it's just like a one-time thing, then it's not going to have a negative impact on the overall efficacy of the color ranking.
Right. I posted this one. This is an example of one we already did, so I'll skip Wild Island. Clearinghouse. Okay, so with Clearinghouse, in this could just be my lack of understanding on how this works, but the PooCoin chart looks a certain way. However, there's also KuCoin, and Gate.io. And I'm just wondering, how do we determine whether a project is successful with, I guess, different information? Because if we were to look at just this only has a market cap of 3,400. So this doesn't even.
Well, let's
doesn't
stop real
seem right.
quick. The first step is to make sure that you're looking at the same coins, because just because they have the same name or symbol doesn't mean they're the same coins. So that's first thing to verify there.
That
Correct.
one's looking at BNB as well. The other one's looking at USDT. So that's a CLH versus USDT. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. So you got to make sure you're looking at the right contract and that it has liquidity in the coin that you're looking at.
So what would he change here? CLH to BNB?
We'd have to do a little research to see
I mean, I would just remove
how
this.
they launched, like what it should be compared to.
Yeah, I would remove this chart from the process because it's not the same chart. It's
Right.
yeah. So all you got to go on is here,
Right.
because those other charts were for something else. CLH compared to USDT, it's a different comparison. Yeah. So
And it
know-
does look like they do have both a BNB and USDT. If you look on the left, they do have liquidity in both.
and you could click on chart there and look at the USDT chart, but it's only $227 in liquidity. So
Yeah, this.
It's not
I
a
think
good looking
overall,
one.
this is not going to be a good project.
no, I mean, it looks like a rug pull has 3,000 market cap, but do we know the opening price, or I mean the pre-sale price?
No, I couldn't find that either.
Gotcha.
It was there wasn't a lot of information for me to go on.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. So basically, so this is a failed project. How do we determine that? Market cap sitting at 3,000. It's clearly not being supported in any way, unless there's a lot of people coming in going, no, I made a bunch of money on it. We could relook at it, but I mean, otherwise, that low of a market cap, no information on top of just how poorly it's doing, I would downvote something like that. I wouldn't want to get into a project like that. And I
Right.
don't think anyone else would either. We just want the voting to reflect that, it's what it's doing is, do we want to get into projects like that? And if the answer is definitively absolutely not under any circumstance, then you definitely just downvote it.
Okay. Okay. This one, so this is a project I ran across. This can be the last one we look over. Dalmatian Doge. And so it has not been launched yet. So I was searching projects that needed to be launched. And when I ran across this one, the Telegram had been cleared out or reset. So, they changed the name, they changed the information. The last post was,
Well, what was the price chart like though? I mean, that would differ, in the context of voting on the price chart, are you saying that we don't know even if we're
No,
looking at the right?
right, I don't have, or I guess if we assume that, so there's no because it hasn't been launched yet, there's
Yeah,
no contract address in here, but I can't get a contract address from the chat.
right. So if the scout is doing this, if quirky things are coming up from the same scout, like you have to have a conversation with them or just blacklist them if you can't. If it's a great scout, which I think this is, it's just a one-time incident, I think you just, we try to make an assumption, like where's the, we don't even know what the chart is, do we?
Right.
Yes,
You don't know
I
what
would
the chart is.
Yeah, so I would downvote something like this on all time, right?
And then also the website, you go to the website and you get this.
Yeah, so I would downvote something like this.
Okay.
Because again, would you want to get in a project like this? Anybody here?
No.
Right. So That's the most important deciding factor, right? So when there's a lack of information and there's clearly some scammy stuff going on, you just want to make sure the system knows we don't want these projects.
Okay,
So the thing is, Mike, what you don't want to launch the project because so there's no voting. We're going to have a not only a rug pull button, which says after the fact, this was a
Right.
honeypot or a rug pull. We're also going to have a scam button that shows up prior to launch to put the skull and crossbones on a project like this to keep
Yeah.
people away from it. So
Yeah. So in this case, you
they
can't.
may have
vote
never
on it.
launched, right? I mean, there is no.
Yeah, you
smart
can't vote
contract.
on it because it wasn't launched, right? But we'll have the rug pull and skull and bones for these kinds of things.
Right.
okay, perfect.
One or the other. In this case, I would probably click both.
Right. And so I just had a couple questions real quick that relates to voting.
Yeah.
Do we launch and vote for NFT projects right now?
I would say if there's no smart contract, then no. If it's like a NFT platform or something like that, or it's an, actually a token associated with an NFT launch, then yes. But if there's no smart contract, then, and there's no launch pad per se, then no.
Okay. How do we vote whether an
Well,
NFT
in other
project-
words, I don't think NFT projects should be posted on the calendar if it's not associated with a token launch.
Okay,
Do you agree with that, Jeremy? I just don't see how it. I
Yeah,
don't
we've
know.
talked about either adding adjustments or creating a different page specifically for NFTs or something in the future. But yeah, at where we're at now, I would agree. I would not put NFTs themselves that are launching, just the projects associated with creating NFTs, or they have a token to fund creating an NFT marketplace or whatever. But there is a smart contract, then I would put them on the platform.
Let's talk about why real quick and correct Jeremy and I if we're missing something. But if I know about some NFTs that are launching and it's not a token, it's not a platform with NFT, it's just NFTs. There's maybe a 100 of something NFTs being minted and they're going to be available on OpenSea or whatever at such and such date. If I thought they were valuable, wouldn't I be trying to buy those NFTs? Like, it's not like tokens where I want people to know about it because I want it to be a successful project. Like, what's the motivation to share with people, that these NFTs are launching? If there was actually any value to them. With tokens, it makes sense because you want people to know about it because it's a successful project. And if you get into it and other people get into it, then it's successful. But NFTs, there's such a limited resource of them. I'm not getting the motivation for someone to post on their calendar if they have good intentions to share NFTs they think will be valuable. Can anyone enlighten me on that? I could just be missing something.
I could see one reason, like if it's a new project and a new artist and he's got 10,000 he wants to mint and he's not as popular as other people think, but you think it's going to pop off or whatever, and you want to advertise it and try to get as many people to buy as possible. Otherwise, yeah, I don't think the competition would be good for you on popular ones.
And how do you vote afterwards if it was successful or not?
right, it's subjective.
Well, they
Right.
were talking about using the floor price after launch, right? Because after it's launched, people try to sell right away, and you can go on OpenSea and you can see the bottom price, the floor price. And if it's above the mint price, then
Right.
people are saying it's successful. But I think we came to the conclusion just not to vote on NFTs per se, unless there was a token associated with the project.
Yeah, I would suggest we earmark this and discuss it at length, right? Like, I think there's a lot to dig into here, and maybe it requires a different option when you're uploading a project to the calendar, like different set of fields that people are filling out. But I would say right now, we don't vote on them until more discussion happens. And I'm not so sure how excited I am that the calendar is filled up with these as we have it right now. I think we need to discuss it more because it does seem like a kind of a different framework. I think we got something. I think we have the framework to do something with it closely, but I'm not sure we want it to mesh into the current framework. You guys have any thoughts on that? I'm just
No, I
talking
totally
about-
agree with you. I think that if we have no way of like voting on a project or that, you know, it shouldn't be on the calendar. And I think that until we have a process for the NFT.
I mean, yeah, because I could,
No.
because otherwise I could be like posting about my, you know, my used television for sale.
Exactly. And that's, you know, I mean, we can vote on NFT tokens. We just, you know, but people are putting NFTs, you know, on the calendar and we really shouldn't.
I don't
have
think
that.
so. Yeah. Does anyone else see it differently? Or right now, isn't it kind of?
I think there should be a separate calendar for NFTs,
Yeah.
mintings, like not tokens,
And,
like
and again,
projects with tokens.
we haven't been real motivated to invest time into that because we're a little unclear if there's a compelling reason for people to share.
So there's
value in-
there is one compelling reason, Mike, and that is the people who are creating the NFT. They want to popularize it.
But don't they do that on OpenSea or wherever they're launching it from?
Yeah, and they
Post
may just see this as another way to advertise or get people to buy their NFTs, right? So, but I
have
think that
no-
if we're not going to have them on the platform for now, it should probably be unapproving those projects.
Yeah, I would suggest we don't approve NFTs that don't have tokens associated with them just for now. Unless someone sees a different, maybe I'm missing something. It doesn't seem like what we're doing.
That sounds fair. Just to leave it with pre-sales IDOs and fair launches for now
I agree
until
with
you
that.
can.
And so we have something else in place.
Yeah,
And again, I'm a little confused. I'm not confident in investing time and energy into creating that if, you know, if it's just like a place for artists to spam their NFTs.
yeah, basically just free advertising for them.
Yeah, I just don't get it. Like, how do I know that that's valuable?
I do like the channel in the Discord and potentially maybe in the Telegram later on, Smirking Revenge is constantly posting mintings for the Cardano. That's helpful for us in the groups. Maybe they could take it to the Telegram too, and there's something special, and then just leave the platform to IDOs, fair launches, and pre-sales, private sales.
So again, I'll want to dig deeper with you guys, maybe on a separate call and with them. What's his motivation? Like, what's their motivation for posting them? And how do we bring integrity to that process?
Yeah,
Like,
how
for
can you
example-
vet a project, right? How can you know whether something is going to be a good NFT or not?
Right. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Because even in the Discord, I'm wondering. Okay, so someone's posting about NFTs. They may or may not be successful. It may or may, like, there's no integrity process, right? It makes me uncomfortable when there's no integrity process. So Jesse, kind of share that with me. Like, you obviously see it valuable. Like, share more with me about that when there's no efficacy behind it.
I think that there needs to be more training, like bits of wealth, I think his name is. I can't remember his
Yes,
personal
Cesar did
name.
some trainings on it.
Cesar, yeah, he did a really good training course. And then I've been delving into Luna, and they have a bunch of NFTs. And I watched one video where the guy actually explained a little bit on how you can judge for yourself whether it's going to be a good minting or not. But
So, hey,
there's
but-
definitely education that needs to happen.
But there's the
before you-
confusing part. Like, if you did get some education and you were able to kind of pinpoint, wow, here's what makes a good NFT project worth that's launching worth investing into. What motivate you? And there's usually only 8 being released or 100 at the most. Like, there's usually not that many. Like, what would motivate you after finding that gem to share it with others? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like finding a gold mine and then like blasting out to everybody the map.
Is there referral, is there referral money involved?
Well, there's
there?
something that's what concerns me is I
Yeah,
think
me
the
too. That's why-
the motivation for people to share is that they have an incentive, that they're incentivized to promote it. But that's not necessarily good, you know, to have in a community and for have people seeing, right? Like, just because I'm incentive, if I'm paid an incentive or I have some kind of incentive involved with sharing something with, you know, with people, that doesn't mean it's good for those people to see it.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with that. The only value I can see is if they get some excitement about it and they happen to be the one who gets it first and the other people wanted it, it may drive up more buying pressure on those NFTs potentially for the resale market. But I
True.
don't know. I mean, and how can you analyze whether that's going to be good or happen or not, you know?
Right.
The only potential incentive I could see for someone posting would be to get into the referral program for us. So say the NFT developer wants to do an AMA, or they want to put an ad on or something. Otherwise, yeah, like it is going to be a rare commodity. So it might not be worth your time to post a good project.
It's just, I could see a culture developing where everyone's spamming NFT projects and there's no efficacy other than, and the only motivation for them to do so is there's an incentive for them to do so, right? And then now it's the opposite of Vetter. Now it's the opposite of integrity data. It's just, if I find NFTs, I just spam them in this community. I hope it's a success. If it's not, there's no accountability. I just wonder what kind of culture that creates. And like, it just seems the opposite of what we're trying to create.
Because I've seen, I mean, and I'm really very new with NFTs and just learning them myself. However, I know that a lot of times, if someone talks to me about an NFT, I get a link to their Discord, and then I wind up seeing on the Discord, like me as a referral. So how does that benefit the person who's sending out that link in some way? Jesse, do you know?
For sure.
I'm sure that they're getting some sort of benefit to that, whether they get a whitelist on the minting or something. Because I've gotten those 2 invites to Discord servers, and then you kind of look into it and it's like, you need to invite this many people to get in this whitelist for a chance at the minting. So I'm sure, yeah, there's a value for the person sending you those links.
Now this is different to me than a project launching a new game that is going to have NFTs in the game. And there's a reason to own the NFTs because there'll be a game where you can use them. And, maybe the NFTs are coming out first. So I might post on the project, a link to something, and yeah, there's a token launching at some point, and first the NFTs will be available. That seems different to me than, some 15-year-old kids are making NFTs in their basement and they set up a referral system for people to go out there and spam them all over our community and everywhere else. And then they go make a bunch of money and then they're on to the next NFT project. I don't know if I want to support that kind of a, short-term racket. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just like, there's no sustained value that builds a good reputation for Vetter to get caught up in that too much.
Yep, I agree.
Well, I'm glad I brought
agree
that
too.
question up. That was a good conversation.
Very, very good. I'm glad you brought up too. I think we should definitely follow up in the community on the topic of NFTs. I don't think I have a complete picture on this particular aspect of it, but I do feel like, it doesn't quite fit in yet to the Vetter model yet as it stands. Like, we need to figure out how to bring some integrity to the process so we're not don't just become a spam group. Okay, guys, so is that a wrap on the charts?
That is a wrap.
All right, thanks, Ryan, for taking us through that. That's awesome. And for anyone that can hang out here to have a discussion about the voting process, please hang out. But